I don't look for any big changes on it, though, however, folks. As much as we think people are waking up, and they are, the fact is that the majority will still stand behind anyone who holds up a Bible and says, I'm a Christian president, go back to sleep. And so all the churches go back to sleep. Because they're not led by the Lord's people to begin with. Joel Osteen, Billy Graham, Benny Hinn, Kenneth Copeland. I mean, come on, folks. These are the biggest snakes in sheep's clothing, the biggest wolves. And they lead their congregations away from politics. In fact, I think it's a whole thing with this tax. What is it? What is it called? The tax exemption status of these churches. You know what I'm talking about. They can't even talk politics. And they certainly don't tell any kind of truth in the congregations. And so that's where we're headed, folks. It's just going to be a big, just a big charade over the next 2 years into 2009. We will go into, I don't care if I say we will be into Iran. Iran will be here. Iran always had a preempt policy that they would strike the United States first if they thought America was going to go to war against them. And so for a year or two now, you've seen Bush baiting them. We're going to war. Here's our ships. Come on, strike us first. He's been baiting them. And so how long do you think Iran's going to sit back and watch America build their forces around their country before they strike back? And what they're doing is they're waiting on this Maitreya to come. And this is their Imam and Mahdi, the last one that they've been waiting for. And I'll tell you what, this Maitreya is going to plunge the whole world into war. So I think he's going to be the impetus behind World War III. He'll be the reason. I think he's the sole reason anyway that the United States is afraid of Iran. Now, why do they care if Iran wants to build a nuclear facility and maybe in 20 years has nuclear power when so many other countries have it themselves? I think they're trying to stop Maitreya from arriving. I think they're trying to get a feel on when he's arriving so that they can adjust their foreign policy according to when they think he's going to arrive. And last week I talked about how they have their finger on the earthquake button because Sananda and them are threatening to arrive, making first contact with the world via UFO invasion. So now all of a sudden we have all these earthquakes. They do know what's going on behind the scenes with this alien threat. What are aliens, folks? They're fallen angels. It's Satan's forces because they all have their own agendas, too. I mean, you think Putin and Blair and Bush and all them can't straighten out their own factions? The aliens have their own, too. They have their own thing coming. And so trying to counteract what they're threatening to do is basically what Bush is trying and our government's doing. When Maitreya does arrive, he will lead all of their Arabs into war against Israel and America. I know most of the churches have everybody thinking that Russia and China are coming. And they base this on various, I think Ezekiel 37 and 38, which actually goes after the millennium. They totally take that out of a timeline. That war does not happen before or during the tribulation period. And so you can take Ezekiel 37 and 38 that you've been told about your entire lives if you're churchmongers or prophecy students, and put that where it belongs at the end of the millennial reign, because that's where that goes. From what I can see is this Maitreya is going to unite the Chinese and the Arabs, all of Arabia and the Chinese, against Israel and against America. And so there goes, and Europe's not unscathed. They're going to go after Europe as well. And so this is pretty much going to be a huge World War III coming up. It's not just going to be another American disaster of Iraq typo. It's going to be a whole full-blown World War type thing. And this Maitreya, he's very powerful. He's very hateful. And And so I think that their own inability to understand being able to analyze themselves what's going on with future events. And if you'll notice, I've laid off my blog. I don't even talk on my blogger anymore. Simply because I get tired of being their analyst. Let them figure it out for themselves. I'm not going to tell them the steps to take. I'm going to let things just sit back and happen as they happen. Because that's what they do, folks. They hunt down the Lord's real people so that they can make their own plans. And if you say nothing, then they have no idea what's coming, what's going on. And it's less terrorism that they're planning on their own end. Hi, Sherry. Are the aliens, Greys, Dracos, and Nordics merely the fallen angel under Satan's command? Yes, they're all subservient to Satan, folks. The Greys are mass-produced like we mass-produce automobiles. They're just mass-produced beings. The Draconians, another word for the Draconians are the dragons. And they're at the top. That's what Satan is. Satan's a Draco. Satan's a dragon. And so you have your Draconian dragons at the top. You have your Mothmen. I don't know if there's a difference between the Draconians and the Mothmen, if they're one and the same thing. Because you hear people describe the dragons and the Mothman, and it sounds to me like they're one and the same being. So they're both together. They're all up there at the top of the rank and chain there. It's the dragons and the Mothmen. And then you have the tall Greys. And then you have the small Greys. And you have the reptilians up there above the tall Greys. And so you have like the Dracos, the Mothmen, the reptilians, the tall Greys, and the small Greys. And the small Greys are the worker bees, the slaves, the runts, whatever you want to call them, for the reptilians. And a lot of times with the tall Greys as well. And people who have been abducted, and you've listened to abduction stories, will tell you they've seen them with Nordics, they've seen these Greys with tall Greys, and they've seen them with the reptilians. And so they've seen small Greys with all three. And whenever you bring this up about the Nordics being involved, they always have a comeback that, these are the ones who traded sides. You can't win. You can't ever win with these people because they will just circumvent and circle around anything that you say. They'll just say that some of the Nordics were taken over and mind-controlled, and now they work for Satan's branch. And but there's still good Nordics out there. That's why I don't buy the lies of any kind of friendly aliens, because when I keep asking the Lord, are there any friendly aliens, I get no answer, period. I get nothing. All he tells me is that the universe is hostile. The first and second heavens are are not owned, but dominated, because he has a certain amount of time where he can rule over them, by Satan. And so it's very hostile. And from anything I've ever been able to tell is that all of these nice aliens, these humanoids and Nordics, are just working as controlled opposition for Satan. They're just controlled opposition. Question from a reader. Comment, really, if Bush and Cheney are gone at the same time, Pelosi is the president. Yeah, that's the civilian chain of command. Now, the military has their own different chain of command. And so you tell me which one, because we've never faced this as a country, which chain of command is going to come first, which one, the civilian or the military, because there's two different chain of commands. And Nancy Pelosi is very interesting because I see the name Nancy in the Bible codes a lot. Nancy and Hillary. And I just don't think there's a lot of wishful dreaming here that they're going to be impeached and imprisoned. I think we're hoping for too much here. Even being the traitors and guilty of treason as they all are.